Yes, hello, everybody. I appreciate that you spend your lunchtime out here instead of being in the cafeteria. So let's talk a little bit about Coats and where we come from and where we go to. Just for the people who don't know Coats, we are basically a leader manufacturing in yarn production. And we basically split up in 4 different groups. Traditional yarns. If you think about this, our reach is 78% of all the yarn spun in the world is in the products you're wearing. So the chances are that you have Coats yarns inside your gowns, in your cars, everywhere where something needs to be stitched is basically a Coats product. Okay? As you can see here, some key numbers. We are very diversified all over the world. We need to follow the apparel industry, the contracted apparel industry, but we have big challenges in delivery in CRM. Okay, so our customers, for example, they will get orders from Tommy Hilfiger or whatever they are, and they say, you need to deliver 10,000 t-shirts by the end of next week. Okay, and 5,000 of them need to be available on Wednesday. Okay. So that is basically the challenge we have to face to basically capture customer requirements very, very quickly, deliver on demand without stockpiling material, and have it on the customer side in the right color. So color is very, very important, and color is one of the core competencies of Coats, because we guarantee the consistency of the color based on the sample the customer sends to us. So the turnaround time was in the past around 48 hours. As you can see, that doesn't fit to the business model at all anymore. And we can turn it now around within 4 to 8 hours, typically, when it is not a color, which is completely out of scope to the gowns. Okay? So very quickly, just for the dimensions, to give you some perspective, we're spinning every day so much yarn that we can spin the world 4,000 times every day in yarn. Okay, so that is quite some numbers. We basically have different brands. I don't want to go inside there, but I want to also mention that we are in the zip business. It's a branch of ours as well. We have performance materials, which is basically a splice of yarn and carbon fiber. Very popular and will be OEM'd in the automotive industry. So that segment grows by 78% each quarter in the last couple of quarters. And the last materials we're having is basically concerning fiber. If you think about overseas fibers, the problem here is the glass fibers are so thin that they need to be stabilized with special yarns which are water resistant, because they're usually also sea fibers, and that is also a very growing market in our segment. So 4 big segments out there. And then for sure we have also crafts. Crafts is a typical stitching, sewing, whatever you find at Walmart. If you go to Walmart and you put out a yarn roll out of the things, you see the Coats logo on it, so that's our brand. We deliver them exclusively out there. Okay, where's the little clicker? Okay, so motivation. I need to elaborate a little bit about this. The motivation is prior to my time, but it's always the same motivation like for everybody of you. It's agility, it's cost, it's basically finding a better platform in order to achieve more bang for the buck, let's define it this way, and to be on a platform which is basically agile enough to basically scale to the business needs and basically grow with you as a customer, and also being flexible to be moved around, because as you can think in our area, we need to move with the contracted manufacturing all over the world. So you need to basically follow them in order to be competitive, and again coming back to the delivery schedule, in order to be basically able to deliver at this point in time. So we are basically in all areas of the world, from Korea to Vietnam to India to China to Europe to the US, everywhere. So based on this kind of, so I think I covered most of this. I'm not a slide reader, I'm more a talker out there. Right? So what you see here is, you can see it, it's a traditional landscape. So this is where our hosting provider, our former hosting provider, let's say it this way, is basically rooted in, and costs very high, very unflexible, change requests to the environment, very, very complicated to go through, landscape big, and especially in this area you will see some abnormalities here, and that is rooted in history. So we didn't do the best thing in that area, so I admit it right away. And standard server, AIX at that point of time, Oracle at that point of time, and distributed over 4 geographical landscapes, okay? So not very efficient, not very simplified. If you think about cost, think about support costs, think about consolidating together, working with one partner, very complicated to do, okay? The post-migration phase, okay? So what we did is basically, we decided for Azure for various reasons, and we were also an early adopter in the Azure program for SAP. So we had very good support in this area, and we basically designed this environment with Microsoft together, and also with the help of our partner with Brillio, by having detailed assessments done before we even move, and basically bring the landscape up to a point where you can basically have a heterogeneous migration, because this is not a homogeneous migration, because we're coming from Oracle and IBM out there, and we're going basically to SUSE Linux and HANA on the other end, right? We made an early decision that we will basically convert all our databases to HANA. I have basically no other database in operation other than HANA databases for any module out there, okay? And you see this here also on the technology stack, rooted on SUSE Linux. I will elaborate this a little bit, because you see also a Windows sign on this, and I will explain that in a later slide a little bit. A little bit of an overview, 3,000 active users on the system globally. We are at the moment located in West US, which is not ideal, but it was at that point of time the start of this endeavor. We will move up to Dublin, because we want to basically in the center of all our users. If you imagine Coats as a company and you imagine the world around it, the majority of users are in the Asia Pac area, some of them in the US area, some of them in the EMEA area. So you want to find a place where you basically have the best connectivity in terms of round trip times and infrastructure provisioning in your portfolio. So Dublin is our new agreed production site, where the non-production sites, where we have the sandboxes, the QAS systems and stuff like this, I put them in West and East US, because from the Azure perspective, this is for me the most cost-effective way to do so, okay? Good. A little bit more numbers out there. I think if you have questions to this, I can ask this, but you see we have a whole sammelsurium of SAP modules out there, which we need. The most important ones for our business is ECC and APO. That's the most important, which are critical to the business. One more time, after the migration, even so the numbers are high, we saw immediately a TOC reduction of 60%. That is mainly rooted in consolidation. So in terms of having the right partner, now sustaining one place, I also introduced a principle which is called the design, build and run principle. So all the machines we are building, because remember it was a heterogeneous migration, so we made basically an export and an import. We also introduced strict guidelines so that all the machines are built the same, so that we don't have these outliers of different machines with different corky installations. They are all cookie cutter, the same layout, the same changes. That is coming all in the nice due diligence with Brillio in the clips predetermination where we want to go, okay? Faster time to market, surely. We had a huge increase here, and we were forced to, as I explained before, because of our customer base to do so. And the in-memory database is really, really delivering the bang for the buck instead of a disk-based system. And I'm sorry, my voice is very bad because I was very sick last week, okay? But I'm not contagious anymore, okay? And yeah, and operational efficiency, I talked about this, so next slide, please. So, now you're on the cloud, right? And everything is handy-dandy, you think, till you get the first bills from Microsoft, right? And then you think, oh my God, how can I afford that, right? So, as you see, I started in this time frame, okay? And this time frame marked the end of the migration to Azure Cloud. And what do you see? This is, by the way, just SAP numbers, okay? So not the non-SAP environment. We have also around 400 servers in non-SAP out there. As you see, we're creeping up. We're creeping up, we're creeping up, we're creeping up. And before you turn it around, make the math. This is a daily consumption rate of Azure at that point of time, okay? So coming on board and working for a global hosting provider for quite some time, I had now the opportunity to say, now let's sit down and start the second phase, which is basically how do we optimize our environment? How do we get to a point where I can basically afford to be in the cloud, okay? Because we have all this persona, we're in the cloud, now we can lay back, everything is taken care of, but now we have a different problem, how do we get costs under control, okay? So there are a couple of key indicators which you need to look for. Typically you have a partner who is basically facilitating with you a lift and shift. So what do? They look at your early watch reports, they look at the SAP's requirement, and they basically determine a machine type. After a while running this, you should take the time to review this if this is really utilized to the extent you want to be. Because remember, you are in a consumption-based environment. You pay as you go, okay? And so that was one review. The next review is, how do I deal with machines which the business does not need to be having online all the time? Okay, how do I deal with that? How do I create a schedule? And my partner and me, we basically work very hard on that. It's a very tedious exercise going through your enterprise, identifying all the machines which need to run on that schedule and scheduling them. And that's where you see this came in place by changing machine types, getting the schedules implemented, and you see what the difference really is when you basically can talk to your peers and say, look, I see only one user out there. Do you really need to run this sandbox from 8 to 5 or from 24/7 every day? No, you don't, okay? Another thing you should think about is, we are purely HANA, as I said. We have no other HANA no other databases in the thing. Think about buying a bigger instance of an M series, for example, and stack multiple HANA databases on one of them, okay? Because for non-production, you're fully compliant with SAP to have multiple development or QA databases on one installation of HANA. Yes, I know, you will tell me, but how do I deal when I want to change from another HANA support pack or HANA versions? But in general, think about all these things, and we consolidated all our dev, QA, and sandboxes on 3 HANA large instances and have them all running on one database service instead of for each landscape one database service, because it adds up over time. You will not believe how the cost will add up in this thing. Make a smart decision about what you do with reserved instances. Run your numbers. Run your machine types numbers. Think about what you can do on top of that with reserved instances. What can you commit? Because the discounts are tremendous if you can commit to 3 years instead of a short amount of time. So all these basically comes down to here. Now you see also a little bit an increase here. We started with HANA large instances as physical machines. So you heard about this, the S128S, the 2 gigabytes machines. At the moment we're testing the M series, very successful. And from my point of view, this is the way to go. So all these factors together contributing down, and you see still the downwards trends in general out here. My goal is to reach, for the SAP subscription, a monthly daily running rate of $2,500, and I'm on my best way to get there right now. And you see also in the area of storage cost, when you start in, your integration partner will tell you, you need to have everything on premium storage. Does an application server really need premium storage? No, it doesn't, okay? But it costs a tremendous amount of money if you accumulate this up over a year instead of using standard storage for that, okay? Another thing is, for example, which is not on this slide, is, for example, support costs for SUSE Linux for SAP, okay? So as you might have noticed, there's a line item in the past which was charged differently for SUSE Linux of SAP. So you ask yourself, why do I pay $22,000 a month for SUSE Linux of SAP support when I'm actually just using it for, I call it lower critical servers, which are basically application servers, right? So back to the slide where I said you saw the SUSE Linux in Windows, we are on the way and we have 60% completed all our application servers from SUSE Linux to Windows, for example, because to Windows. So we're running basically Windows application servers on the front end, and we're running HANA on SUSE Linux in the back end. Fully supported solution. We had reference customers like the soft drink company, what's it called, Red Bull, and they confirmed no problems. I had out of my history is hosting Energizer, also a big company, runs the same scenario out there, Windows front end, Linux backend. So very, very successful project, and you see now my costs going down and down and down because I'm decommissioning more and more SUSE Linux machines. And they know about this, and I explained it to them, but it's unbeatable because under my enterprise agreement, a Windows license costs me only $7 a month instead of $100 and a couple of dollars per month, which I need to add to my machine. So what I'm saying is, you need to make your math. I know it is tedious work, but the tedious work will basically result in examples like this. You will come down with your cost, and you will be proud that you can run your environment after the lift and shift into a cloud environment which your company can afford, and is basically returning the return of investment back to you guys in order to have a stable environment. Next topics are HR and DR, which is also to be looked at, right? But it's all a matter of RTO and RPO, okay? So Coats is not flying airplanes, okay? So we are a thread manufacturing. Our DR requirements are basically 24 hours, and the RPO is 2 hours for DR. In case of HA, I have 1 hour of RPO and 2 hours of RTO, okay? Now, with HANA, you know you can do HANA replication, so the 1 hour is really not a problem of fulfilling that requirement, because I have continuous replication to another host, and commit to this basically with a smaller host, and basically then bring the system up. These are all things we can talk about.
So RPO is almost zero. Recovery point is almost zero. What about recovery time?
So the recovery time is depending on your database size, right? So we made a couple of tricks on the front end, and let's call the front end like your CI and your application servers. We have them in so-called availability groups. So if you, for example, have 6 application servers, spread them out, 3 of them in one availability group, 3 of them in another availability group. So if one by accident should go down, you still are fully functional with your application servers in the other availability group, okay? My CIs are clustered with a service from a company, from a third party, so that they are always online. They have a load balancer in front of it, so they are always online because they're critical for being connected to the database all the time. But these little things make it really, really redundant. And the last piece which you have to decide, and this is really just a cost question, you need to present it to your board and say, look, pick and choose. These are the options I have available for you. What is critical for you? Is time critical for you? Is money critical for you? Is risk critical for you? So I can tell you, in my history of being in Azure cloud with my HANA large instances, we had a couple of events where the machine goes down, okay? For whatever reason. It happens. It doesn't happen very frequently, I think we had it once a year in average maybe, and you have immediately the new machine available. But what are you facing right now? The machine is offline. You turn it on. It needs to go to the Linux consistency checks. That takes 40 minutes in average. Then you hope that you can go through a consistency check with HANA. Yes, I know. And getting from there. So you need to decide what we do. We have decided, for us, we have not a second instance. We will recover from backup because our databases are in a size where I can still be in 2 hours up and running at this point. And now I'm getting all the signs to hurry up, but I can answer questions out here as well, okay?
Thank you, Helge.